Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Friends Show. I'm your host, Nicholas Lorimer, today joined by Sara Gon. Let's get into the news of today. And the first thing we're going to be talking about is the government matric pass rate, which is a record 87.3% of pupils who wrote the matric exams passed last year. The Deputy Minister of Basic Education, who's an ANC minister, described this as strengthening and maturing the education system. The DA Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Gurube, was announcing the results and said that there were many positive results. However, she did say that she believed that this was mostly the work of former Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga. Said, "We are very happy. That's why we thank our predecessors who worked the ground when it was still tough, and they leveled it, and now we are moving on the red carpet." Angie Motshekga, is very proud because to me it's her work. There were, I think, the best performing province was once again the Free State, which has been dominating the performance amongst the provinces for a while. Gauteng has now fallen behind, I think, both KZN and the Free State in terms of its results. Another interesting stat was around 40% of the Free State's passes were bachelor degree passes. These are passes that are of a higher standard, a higher level of pass, and they're closer to what I would consider a more reasonable benchmark, actually, of the kind of true pass rate, because they have much higher standards and they allow you to get into university. Warube said that 67% of bachelor's passes come from quintile 1 schools. This means our poorer communities are producing learners who can become doctors, accountants, and uplift their communities. Apparently, also 69% of pupils passed maths and 75% passed physical science. Sara, is the education system beginning to turn the corner and become one that produces good results and people who are able to find employment in the workplace? I think that this seems to be a movement in the right direction, but I think that we're very much missing the much deeper problems that still exist in the system. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think my concern is I tend to be a bit cynical given our history, and the results seem high, particularly in the maths and the science. You have to have done a lot of work in the fairly recent past to have got those sorts of results. I think that as I understand it, you have to do 7 subjects, but you have to pass 6 in different ways, whether you're going for a bachelor's or a diploma pass or a higher certificate pass. As far as I know, something like, what was that thing we were talking about, that subject, where life skills, life orientation. Yeah. is a subject that has to be, that is one of them that has to be written. Now, to my feeling is to have life orientation, because I think it's a movable feast, is you should rather give credits for people attending, and in the event that they don't attend to 80 or 90% or whatever it is that attend the classes, you could maybe trade off whether they get the matric certificate or not, or something else. But I think they would be better off saying people need to write 6 subjects, and 40% is the home language, and 50% being for the higher credit subjects in order to get a bachelor's pass. And you can reduce it for diploma pass to 40% for the higher subjects, high credit subjects. But the 30% pass as happening should not exist at all. You either pass at a certain level in order to get that level's permission to go on to bachelor's, diploma, or otherwise. Something like life orientation, I know that kids treat it as a joke, and I think writing an exam doesn't make a difference, but I'm not sure, and I certainly remember when my kids did it, much fun was made of it, whether the right things are being taught, whether they don't change from year to year, whether that curriculum itself isn't to some extent the subject of in a given time and space. That's the one thing. The other thing is we don't know to what extent those results are real, given the fact that the Department of Education has traditionally tried to keep out of matric those students who in grade 11 show signs that they won't pass. Now, that's not per se wrong, in the sense that if the alternative type of accreditation is given for people to go into other types of learning, more practical learning, where they can get jobs without having a matric, are made available. And the TVET colleges are there, but they're controversial as to whether they're producing results as well. So unless and until we have a full idea of what the sort of grade 9 pass out situation is, how grade 10s and 11s are being assessed, and whether they are being kept back from matric or being provided for something more appropriate, I don't know. I'm very pleased to see higher results, but I'm not entirely convinced that they are as useful an indicator as they should be.
Indeed. And I've also, as you say, we don't know how many people are reaching the end of the line. When you look at the number of kids who go into the system in grade 0 or grade R, as they call it these days, and then eventually end up writing matric and passing, there's a huge narrowing effect that goes on. And then there are all sorts of ways that, then you have to think, well, are the kids who are passing their subjects with kind of 30% and 40% really getting an education that is going to serve them in their lives? And by the end of the system, even if you've got this relatively high pass rate, you find that a relatively small percentage, I think, of the students have actually gotten the education that will help them to succeed in their lives going forward. And that's the real problem. And I don't think that, getting the pass rate up is a part of that story, but it's only the very end of the process. It's not actually the real, the change to the education system that we need. Still, it does seem to be a movement in the right direction, at least, even if it's not as good, perhaps, as government wants it to seem. Any final thoughts before we move on?
No. Other than to say that, one really has to know more, that just lavishing praise as the departments have done on, the hard work of teachers, we need something more specific than that, because the teaching profession on a broad base has required a lot of work to be done to improve the quality of teaching. And it just, I'm not convinced that the results are a measure of that necessarily. We need the detail.
So let's move on to our next story. This is something we covered last year, and that is the miners underground in Stilfontein. There is a significant group of miners underground there. We don't know exactly how many. Could be anything from somewhere around 100 people to maybe 500 people. The story that originally emerged was that these miners were trapped underground. Subsequently, there's been doubt cast on that as to whether they were actually trapped. I've been led to understand that it's sort of it's quite confusing. It's not so straightforward. The miners are probably trapped by the fact that if you are injured or sickly or haven't eaten a lot recently, that you're just not able to climb out of the incredibly deep shaft, because apparently these guys are down something like 1 kilometer underground, which is absolutely crazy. There was a lot of controversy because the police initially refused to allow any supplies down to these guys. There may also be the influence of various gang bosses underground keeping these guys there, because many illegal miners are effectively slaves who are trapped underground by their bosses until they pay off their debts for being employed by the mine bosses. There's also perhaps a theory that some of the miners don't want to come up because it means they'll lose the gold that they've mined. Sometimes these illegal miners can spend months underground collecting gold, and if it gets confiscated by the police, which is happening when they get to the top, that may be the reason why they're not so keen on this. However, unfortunately, a large number of them seem to have died. At least 9 corpses were recovered on Monday, yesterday, and have been removed from the site. And rescue operations have finally begun, where a crane is sort of with a cage is being lowered down that can take a small number of the miners up. Because we don't know exactly how many there are, it's no idea how long this is going to take. Some of them are South Africans, but many of them appear to be foreigners from countries around South Africa. It's not clear exactly how this is all going to shake up. But Sara, what do you make of this? It seems like this is a very nasty story, partly because there was this whole attitude originally to smoke them out, to sort of let them die underground. I mean, one understands that illegal mining is out of control, that these guys are often very closely tied to very nasty criminal elements and often engage in violence. But that's not really the proper way things should be done. They should be brought up and arrested for trespassing, or alternatively deported if they are here illegally in the country. What do you make of this story?
As you say, it is an absolutely ghastly story. I think they're victims. I think they're aggressors, and aggressors are probably largely unseen by us. It's a violent environment. The problem, of course, being that once the police stationed themselves at the exit, it meant that anyone coming up was likely to face arrest. And so, in a way, the choice was theirs to make. However, it ultimately pans out, and it's probably at that stage where the authorities are not as at risk themselves because there is hunger, there has been death, etc. The matter will finally, ultimately be resolved. It will not be a glorious one in our history, but perhaps, if nothing else, the experience of it and will put people off going into this, and because ultimately it is the mafias you need to get hold of. But if you can try and in some way discourage, in any way, I mean, it's not perfect because if people are desperate, they'll do it, but it's to try and discourage participating in illegal mining, or revealing as best as possible who's actually behind this stuff.
Right. And it's slightly complicated by the fact that illegal mining in and of itself is not actually a criminal offense at the moment. It's essentially a license violation, mining without a license. And that kind of makes it a little bit harder for the police to act on this stuff. The government has been very slow in passing any kind of legislation on that front. But more than that, this is a much deeper problem of crime, of desperation, of the fact that people are willing to spend months or sometimes even years in the most awful, horrible conditions underground because they can make a living off of it. And I think the real cause here at the end of the day is the fact that South Africa's unemployment rate is so high and that our economic growth is so low. These guys should be working in the formal mining sector, or they should be, getting into the country in the beginning, at least in a legal way. There's just so many layers to this problem, and it's not going to be solved anytime soon unless very serious changes, not just to the law, but also to the capacity of government is changed.
And we just have to bear in mind that traditionally miners have come from the SADC states for decades.
A disproportionate number for sure.
And if they go back to their countries, there's nothing for them to be employed by.
No, exactly. Okay. Competition Commission has put out a report proposing sweeping changes to how fruits and vegetables are sold. I was reading through this article on the Daily Maverick website. Kind of interesting. It really seems like the typical sort of overreach by the Competition Commission. I haven't read the report itself yet, but some of the things reported in the media were like, for example, the Competition Commission says it's too difficult when the sizes of produce bags are not all the same. So, for example, some shops have tomatoes in a 1 kilogram bag and others have tomatoes in a 1.5 kilogram bag. And they said that this is a problem because consumers can't work out which is the cheaper one per 100 grams, and that they want all the shops to introduce a label showing what the cost is per 100 grams. It's like very kind of micromanagey stuff. I sincerely doubt that anyone who is very strapped for cash is unable to work out what the cheapest option is in terms of bang for buck. If you have 50 Rand from which to buy your vegetables with, you're not going to have a problem doing the basic maths of dividing things. I don't care how bad the education system might be when it comes to maths education. But yeah, no, there's also comments in here about how the supermarket industry is supposedly very inefficient and needs to be more controlled, directed, be made more efficient by the state. Competition Commission seems to believe that it alone can divine the path of the economy and should in fact be telling us all what to do and how to buy and sell things. What do you make of this, Sara?
Well, very briefly, my opinion is that in the absence of knowing how this issue got to the Competition Commission and who referred it, I think it's patronizing, and it's, as you say, it's essentially saying poor people can't do the math. Let's put it this way. If people are very poor, the chances are they're in areas where they don't have the choice of being able to compare prices because there is only one outlet that's accessible or acceptably accessible to buy your foodstuffs. So I think it is overreach, and perhaps it suggests that the maths qualifications of the competition commissioners is somewhat lacking.
Yeah, that was the funniest part of this, was the sort of comment that even us at the Competition Commission had difficulty working out, which was the more affordable option. I thought, is that really something you should be putting out in public? But anyway, okay, thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please do subscribe to the channel, The Daily Friend, and also give us a like. That would be very much appreciated. We hope you all have a wonderful day. That's a wrap. We'll be here tomorrow. Bye-bye. The Daily Friend Show and The Daily Friend are a project of the Institute of Race Relations, the IRR. The IRR is a think tank which was founded in 1929 to study race relations in South Africa and works to change government policy to improve race relations through non-racialism and to ensure the prosperity of all South Africans. If you like our work and would like to support us, please go to irr.org.za and click Support the IRR. Or you can go to thedailyfriend.co.za and click the Fund Us button.